Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shore.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. Responsibility for keeping the Isle of Man tidy, air services to and from the island, and the proposed sale of the horse tramway stables were up for discussion this week. Here's Stu Peters with more.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Should all of us in the Isle of Man make more of an effort to keep our island tidy? Local beach cleaning charity Beach Buddies is appealing for donors to keep giving after it received £30,000 in financial aid from government. The Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture handed over the money as part of an effort to expand the scope of the charity. It has almost 7,000 volunteers, but the board wants to expand even further. Should every one of us in the island play our part in keeping the island tidy? What could be done to motivate more people to get behind initiatives like this, do you think? Our first comment about this, about keeping the island clean. Finally, government spending my money on something so important for everyone, including going into primary schools, etc., so children can learn about the damage done to environment, wildlife, etc. More, please, rather than salaries to unelected MLCs. Bill's been doing this on his own for years at his own expense, cleaning up the ignorance mess. Much more needs doing. Our roadsides and footpaths are full of fast food and plastics. Regularly pick up 7 bags full of litter on a short circular walk from home, along a road and through a glen. TT Manx Classic Time, it gets worse. Organisers in the programmes not only need to highlight road safety, but also not to trash our island. Well done, DEFA. Good. Buster says, Stu, some years ago there was something, I think it was called Clean Peace. It was done between the local authorities with people reporting grot spots, and it really worked. Thanks, Buster. And another one, Stuart, winds me up when certain people say on Facebook that they're looking for things to do with the children and partners. Can't understand it. They want picking up at the front door and entertain for the day. Imagination and charities like Beach Buddies need helpers, and there are endless free things to do. Rant over. That's from Guesty. OK, I don't think it's a rant as such. I think you make some valid points. Let's go to the lines because we've got our first caller today. It's Elizabeth. Hello, Elizabeth.
Right, so I think it starts, in fact I'm quite certain that it starts with the parents.
Yes.
Now, going right back to my infant days, yeah. My mother was a widow, there was my 2 brothers, myself, and we were in real bad trouble from being quite small if we started dropping stuff on the ground.
Yes.
If we had a paper, right, that was thrown in the bin or whatever we had then. That I've grown up with, and therefore I've taken it on to my sons. They both, well, one's in America, but they both have been taught to pick stuff up and throw it in a bin.
Got you.
And neither of them, to the best of my knowledge, neither of them ever throw stuff down on the floor. Yeah. I mean, my one son who lives on the island, he comes into Douglas with me shopping, and much to my disgust, and you might or might not agree with me, he insists on smoking. But that's another question.
Yeah.
But my point is that he would not throw that stuff down on the ground.
Okay.
That goes in a bin.
Yes.
It's become a habit. So surely this all starts with the parents.
I think you're absolutely, well, as do so many things in terms of behaviour, I think it is down to the parents, isn't it? I think that probably people are getting better about litter, certainly than when I was a child growing up, I think. Do you agree?
Well, not if they're making such a mess, there's litter all over the place.
But I think it's one of those things that is seen as being, I think people are quite fussy now about if they see somebody dropping something in the street, and the authorities do seem to provide more bins than they ever used to do as well.
Oh, definitely, yes, definitely.
So there's no real excuse, is there? It's a little bit like drink driving. It's one of those things that, is very frowned upon. So littering, I think, by most people nowadays is quite frowned upon, whereas 20, 30 years ago, maybe not quite so much. So,
the beach buddies, that's another question altogether. Mm. I mean, a lot of that comes up out of the sea anyway, doesn't it?
I believe it does. I've been talked to Bill a few times in the past. A lot of it comes in by sea. But, I mean, they go inland as well at times, don't they? And what about these people who fly tip? I mean, beautiful countryside, exactly. And you see an old sofa in the middle of it, or a fridge or whatever. I mean, that just seems crazy to me.
Well, I think if you could track that person down, they are set for a very, very heavy fine.
Yes, that's the
Never
answer to it.
found in mind about I can't afford it. They've got to afford it somehow.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Lovely to talk to you today, Elizabeth. Thank you very much indeed for calling. Hi, can Beach Buddies please explain where all this money is going? Well, it's going back into the service and to try and get more people involved in it. Is somebody getting paid like so many other charities? I don't know the answer to that. I very much doubt it. And I would have thought that they can probably take, hundreds of thousands in terms of grant before Bill Dale gets the money back that he's put in of his own into this to try and get this off the ground. Also, why aren't dull receivers doing the work? Because I'm guessing the system doesn't work like that, but maybe it should. Maybe people can get some sort of a credit for volunteering to schemes like this, rather than having to prove that you've been for 3 job interviews or applied for 3 jobs or whatever it might be. Maybe spending a day volunteering for something like this might qualify, that kind of thing. I don't know, but the system at the moment doesn't seem to work like that. Let's go to the lines. We've got Terry on. Hello, Terry.
Regarding people throwing litter and everything.
Yes.
I had the pleasure some years ago, me and my good wife, we went to Singapore.
Right.
And actually, anybody that drops litter there, the fines are horrendous.
Is that the answer here, do you think?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Put it this way, when I was there, if you dropped chewing gum, you're not allowed to have chewing gum.
Right.
There, you're not allowed to have any chewing gum there. Now then, also, at the same time there, you have a system there where if you drop any litter, it's between 500 Singapore dollars, which is about 400 quid at the time, I think it was, and $1,000 dollars,
Well, that'd kind of put manners on people, wouldn't it, if they thought that they ran the risk of that if they dropped the fast food wrapper or whatever?
Yeah, it's got to come somewhere along the line. If you want to think, I've been on TV a few times, people can't control themselves with a drink. The laws have got to be such, well, if you can't control yourself when you're out, I tell you what, we'll ban you from the pub.
Yeah, that sort of thing, yeah.
As regards the fly tippers, it's quite simple.
Go on.
Right? When you catch them, right, they lose the licence, and they also lose the transport, as if they were running on red diesel.
Oh, I see. Right, okay.
That is the way to do it. And when one or two of these van drivers or people, when they see one or two go, and they say, oh, hang on a second.
Yes.
Because they're making big money by taking people's stuff and dumping it over Marine Drive and that type of thing.
Yeah.
I've got a vested interest there because, I am in the waste business, so,
right.
You just, I better tell you that before I go any further, but, nobody wants to see it. Just, you can walk, you're going down here, you see people, there's throwing stuff, throwing that out of the cars, and, we used to be we've always had a bit of a thing, but it's got worse, especially unfortunately, with fast food outlets, and of course, the fast food outlets, they give packaging and everything, and really, they do have things outside, they do the best they can, I think. But people get it, they eat it and everything. And
take it somewhere with a view and then throw it out the car window.
Exactly, why just don't you have a carrier bag in your car and put it in the carrier bag and next time you're passing a waste bin, just put it in the waste bin.
It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But, there's a certain type of person who just doesn't want to abide by the rules, whatever.
Lazy sods.
That's one way of putting it, yeah, maybe. All right, Terry, thank you very much for your call. I appreciate that. You got to the litter thing eventually. This from Muriel at Zero Waste Man. Stu, we congratulate Beach Buddies and Bill Dale for getting some funding from the government. Let's hope the next government's a bit greener. We sponsored one of the Beach Buddies bins and encourage others to do the same. Ours is down at Port Sodrick and is well used. Next year, Keep Britain Tidy is having a big spring clean during the 3rd to the 5th of March. Wouldn't it be great if all the local authorities could get behind that, not just Douglas and Braddon? Even if people just tidied up around their own homes and workplaces, it would make a difference. We could have a real blitz on the island and smarten it up. And like I say, that's from Muriel at Zero Waste Man. They also do a great job in trying to reduce litter and mess, and are very into recycling. That seems to to be the answer these days, to try and recycle things rather than just throw it out, try and find another use for it. Singapore also spitting, chewing gum, etc. Big fines. Yes, I believe so. That seems to be the answer to an awful lot of things that we talk about in this programme that irritate most of us. Big fines, let's catch some of the people that are doing these things that we all agree are antisocial or whatever and hit them with big fines. It's funny, I very rarely get into Douglas, but yesterday afternoon after the programme I had a couple of errands to do down on Strand Street, so I was wandering along there. And I think the last time I was there, they were still laying the new slabs, the new paving stones and things. So it's all finished now, or it seemed to be all finished now. And I thought, yeah, it's kind of all right. I mean, there's certainly opposite the Strand Centre there, where it's all paved, looks nicer than it did, and up near Marks' kind of looks all right. But it all looked very marked to me. Now, whether or not that's chewing gum or just general wear and tear or not, I don't know. And what the answer is to it, I don't know. Whether or not it needs to be regularly sort of jet washed or something to try and keep it looking sort of bright and newish. But it looked like it had been down there for 10 years. So I don't know what the answer is to that, but chewing gum seems to be a big problem. Stuart, I was walking in the Villa Marina colonnade and saw empty glasses, food containers and a broken umbrella on the floor. I would have picked them up, but all the rubbish bins have disappeared from there. Any ideas, says Stephen? Well, yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people are like you, and they'll quite happily help out. But it's if there are no bins to put things in, you don't want to be taking it home necessarily. When I lived in London and traffic was travelling slowly, if somebody threw anything out the car window, I'd pick it up and throw it back into the car, saying, "I think you've dropped something." You need to be careful with that. That's the sort of thing that starts road rage if you're not careful. When I'm out with the dogs and I see anybody not picking up after their dog, I offer them a poo bag on the basis that they've forgotten theirs, which usually shames them into picking up. We could do a lot more to support a litter-free island by all of us taking responsibility for our environment. More power to beach buddies for cleaning our beaches from the rubbish that the sea brings in. When I'm on the beach, I often pick up a few bits and drop them in the beach buddy bin at Port Sodrick. Lovely, thank you for that. We had good results in high fines with people taken to court when they introduced the fixed penalty notices. We were stuck with having to use them, and the court would ask why it had not been used. A fixed penalty notice was £50, and this was not a deterrent then, according to Buster. And Carl sent me a text. I think you probably sent this in a hurry, Carl, because the words are all just swapped around. I think what you're saying is that there are lots of slabs that need to be fixed on the quayside in Douglas. I'm guessing that's what it really means. But yeah, well, I think a few people have been onto the programme in the past to say about cars and vans parking on these new slabs that have caused them to settle a bit much. So I don't know. I've not been down there for a while, but I'll have to have a look. I used to go for a walk every night in Ramsey and fill 2 carrier bags with rubbish, but Ramsey Town Commissioner's housing department became so obnoxious I won't do it anymore. Oh, let them in their ivory tower get out and pick litter up, says Paul in Ramsey. Okay, well, I don't know what the backstory is to that. Probably don't want to, but yeah, I mean, you were obviously doing something which was a good thing for everybody. So, I think it's terrible if you've been dissuaded from doing that, Paul. I would suggest that, if you want to pick up rubbish and stuff and throw it in bins, then more power to your elbow. New York City has formed business improvement districts where businesses and building owners within a certain set area contribute a modest amount each month to fund street and sidewalk cleaners. Ongoing trash pickup and decorative elements really works well, supplements the municipal functions which never keep up. That's from our Northeast American correspondent, Andrew. Yeah, well, I think New York had a huge clean-up years ago, didn't it? I mean, morally as well, in that all the red light districts were closed down. It was all turned into sort of des resis and sort of bijou little coffee shops and all that kind of thing. I think New York changed dramatically a few years ago. What else have we got? Someone in the direction of Kirk Michael must have had a birthday on Saturday night because I picked up numerous balloons from Ballaugh Beach on Sunday morning, all blowing along the sand and stuck on hedges high up the cliffs. I think balloons should be restricted because they can be dangerous in the wrong mouths. One balloon was a number 5. Okay, Nigel Mansell's racing number. Want to be in him. Prisoners could be used instead of them playing computer games all day. They'd certainly be up for it. Put something back into society. Imagine how well Marine Drive would look with a bit of clearance of rubbish, tidying up, painting the railings, etc., says Buster. Good, yeah, not a bad suggestion. I suppose the problem with that is security, in that if the wrong people know when a work party was going out and where they were going, they could sort of secrete drugs and things like that for people then to find and take back into the prison. I suppose that's the problem. problem with that. So how it would work, I don't know.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
What have your experiences been recently of air travel to and from the Isle of Man? The island's passenger watchdog Travel Watch has been speaking to government ministers in the last couple of days, looking for action to improve punctuality and reliability on EasyJet flights, particularly to and from the island. It follows a report earlier this month from the group highlighting failures on the service which have been causing concern and difficulties for passengers. The airline has since apologised for the inconvenience. What's your experience of air travel to and from the island recently? Have you experienced difficulties, or has it generally been positive and trouble-free? Comment from Chris. He says, Stu, why does the airport have to close at 9 o'clock? Do any of your listeners know? Says Chris. I don't know that it has to close at 9 o'clock. I think that it's just that if they can close it at 9, it means that you don't have to have an entire other shift on as well. So I think it's probably just for cost purposes. But I'm not 100% sure. If anybody knows for sure, then let me know. I think that they do keep it open. If something's delayed by a certain amount of time, then they'll stay open later. But I suppose that then includes having to pay people overtime. Let's go to the lines. We've got Carol on, who's had some problems. Hello, Carol.
I'm afraid it's another one in the neck for EasyJet.
Oh, right.
A month or more ago, my younger daughter lives in Bournemouth, and she got married on the 6th of August, and the week or so before that, I went down to Bournemouth to be with her for her last wedding dress fitting and pay for it, blah de blah.
Sure.
You know, mum comes with the plastic and everything's fine. I had a flight out, EasyJet to Gatwick on the Thursday evening. That was delayed by a couple of hours. It was gone midnight before I got into a hotel at Gatwick. The rest of the weekend went fine. I was coming back on the lunchtime flight on Sunday, which was delayed and delayed and delayed. Eventually they boarded us, but the crew on the plane said, sorry, but we've just been to Alicante and back. We're out of our flight time now. We've boarded you, but there's another crew coming to actually take you to the Isle of Man.
Yes.
So we sat on the plane for half an hour, and then lo and behold, another announcement. Sorry, the weather's closed in on the island. We're not going at all. Flight's cancelled. You'll all be given hotel accommodation. Yeah. There were a lot of people on that flight who had come back from foreign holidays and needed to be at work the next morning. I personally had to be at my older daughter's house to pick up my grandson and look after him for the day by 8:30 the following morning. They gave us accommodation. They put another flight on at 7 o'clock the next morning, and we got here. But while we were all standing around in the main concourse in Terminal 2 waiting for some information, people were getting phone calls from their relatives here on the island saying, what bad weather?
Really?
X flight has landed, B flight has landed, Z flight has landed.
Yes.
Where is EasyJet? So somewhere along the line, there's a slight little untruth, I think. Maybe there wasn't a spare crew.
You think there's an amount of fobbing off going on then?
I certainly do. And what's worrying me now is that my younger daughter and her now husband will be coming over for a very short trip towards the end of September to celebrate my father's 100th birthday. And they go back on the evening flight on the Sunday. They both have to be at work on Monday morning. My daughter is a teacher. And is that flight going to go?
Right.
You know, we're worried about that now, but they don't have an alternative for where they live.
Sure.
So it's worrying. I mean, the EasyJet staff are lovely people. They were very helpful. They were very accommodating. One of them actually said, I don't know why this is happening so often now. It wasn't like this last year. And so that leads me to suspect that maybe they've crammed too many flights into the schedule and just haven't got the crews to cover them.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I remembered seeing a thing from EasyJet a while ago. I think 8th of August, they sent out a news release thing, and they wanted to make it clear. It said that they had 199 flights scheduled to depart or arrive at the Isle of Man between the 1st of June and the 5th of August. Of these, 6 flights were cancelled and 5 were delayed overnight as a result of either air traffic control restrictions or adverse weather. So, you know, as a percentage, it's not bad. And, you know, I do know that if the weather
I was caught up in 2 of them, one of each. One delayed and one cancelled.
I think you were particularly unlucky, but I mean, there will always be cases where the weather sucks in and they just can't fly in it. But, you know, if what you're saying is right, that it's being used as an excuse when other people can fly, then that seems a little bit suspicious.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were people all around me, and there was one young woman with a baby strapped to her and a toddler in her hand, on her own with them and their baggage. And she was on the phone to a relative who was here on the island, and they couldn't understand, you know, where's the flight? All right, maybe we thought it might be delayed, but where is it? There's nothing wrong over here.
Right, interesting. Okay. Yeah. All right, Carol, thank you very much for your call, and I must make sure never to book a flight that you're on, because it seems that you're the unluckiest person possible. So we had that one earlier about why does it close at 9 o'clock? Airports should certainly be open till 12 during the summer months, says Rob. It isn't just about airlines, as I discovered. The radar here hasn't been commissioned and it's 3 years old. It really has got worse, but not just the airlines to blame. Yeah, I mean, I think the radar is working. I think it's just not being signed off by the CAA. I think that's my understanding of it. But again, I might be quite wrong about it. Whenever I've been down there, it seems to have been working. The island should be doing all it can to attract new airlines to the island. Shutting the airport at 9 o'clock at night isn't going to help that. Sums up the Isle of Man's mentality. I'm a frequent flyer, probably 4 times a month with Flybe and EasyJet, never had any major issues. People need to lower their expectation levels. You can't find an airport in the world where all the flights run to time. Staff and cabin crew for both airlines are great. If any flights are cancelled, getting your something compensation is very easy anyway. That's from Adam in Castletown. Okay. Flybe cancelled 2 flights to Liverpool and Manchester one Friday in July. At the end of the Southern 100, handling staff could only offer replacement flights 2 days later on a Sunday. Queue very hacked off and incredulous travellers. Many missed the next day connections, many worldwide. We pay to travel next day by sea, taxi, 3 trains, tube and flights from a southern airport, missing the first 2 days of a special week's holiday. Stranded visitors were incredulous at the situation. Unbelievable that the airline would put them up for 2 nights B&B and evening meals instead of trying to get people home. This is not to mention those who were stranded in the UK, including those returning from hospital appointments. We've lost count of the delays that we've experienced on and off the island, and there not being anyone available who can offer a proper resolution. Handling staff only represent Flybe rather than work for them. Maybe the Director of Ports and Airports might like to comment, says Sally. Thank you, Sally. Stuart, I think part of the problem is the runway extension, lost part of the lighting gantry, which was in the sea. The A319, A319 needs more height if it can't see anything on the ground. OK, I'll bow to your greater knowledge on that one, but it seems to make sense. People travelling to an island like ours have a justifiable expectation that the travel arrangements, either air or sea, will operate comfortably and efficiently. We're not immune from weather and technical issues, and there's a grim inevitability that things will undoubtedly go wrong occasionally. When that happens, the reasonable expectation is that the problem for the traveller will be resolved as speedily as practicable and in a sensitive and pragmatic fashion. Yes, problem comes when disruption is a recurring problem to the degree where travellers are inclined to vote with their feet. The Channel Islands are now fully aware of how disastrous that can be after the recurrent technical problems with the fast ferry introduced in 2015, which have now translated into very significantly reduced tourist arrivals. There it's generally accepted that the recurrent cancellations of the fast craft have undermined their credibility as a holiday destination. Interesting. Unless something constructive can be done with EasyJet schedules, we face a similar danger on the airline front. A delay of an hour or 2 is not good news, but people can cope. Recurring overnight delays are intolerable, and if EasyJet won't change their business model for us, they should reschedule our flights to improve the chances of people getting away the same day. That from John W. Final comment on flying. I would consider myself a frequent flyer, and on the whole I've encountered a very good and punctual service from both EasyJet and Flybe. However, after a recent 6-hour delay at Ronaldsway, our Flybe flight was cancelled and we were put onto the last flight to Manchester. Credit where credit's due, we were all regularly fed and watered and received a €300 compensation each. I also had an EasyJet flight from Gatwick cancelled on Easter Monday 2015, while in the departure lounge at Gatwick Airport I was offered a flight 4 days later, which was totally unacceptable. Yeah, I consequently made my own way home the next day from London City Airport at considerable additional expense. Unlike Flybe, I'm still fighting for my expenses to be compensated, even with the involvement of the CAA some 15 months later. That from Ernie. Okie dokie. And final comment. We get what we pay for. Isle of Man to London return 15 years ago was over £300. Now everybody expects to get there for well under 100, according to Ian.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast, featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station. Manx Radio.
Is debt a significant problem for many families in the Isle of Man? Apparently, more than 1.5 million families across the water are suffering extreme debt due to a collapse in the value of pay, and that's according to a new report. The Trade Union Congress and Unison believe that those in that category are shelling out some 40% of their income just on debt repayments alone. Figures show that wages fell by 10% between 2007 and 2015. But is debt a problem for families in the same way in the Isle of Man, do you think? Are wage freezes and slow wage growth causing real problems? Or is it just a case of cutting your cloth accordingly? And Graham's been on. He says, "Hey boy, I've got no sympathy for the Muppets that go into debt. It's not rocket science." Well, you know, if people go into debt because they want a better lifestyle than they can afford, then to an extent I would agree with you. And I think that there are people who do that. Everybody wants to have the latest iPhone or whatever these days and the latest fashion things and whatever. Now, if you can't save up and buy things that way, and instead you bang them on a credit card and just hope that you can make it up later, then yeah, that's reckless. I would suggest, though, that there are a lot of people that get into debt for no real fault of their own. And if you're in that situation, it's very difficult. The other thing is, I think that many of us, and I'm including myself here now, are only 1 or 2 pay packets away from, you know, being pretty skinned. I'm fairly cautious with money, some would say mean, but even so, I don't know how long I could keep going, paying rent and all the rest of it, if my income stopped, and it's a real worry for a lot of people, that, and people do find themselves in that situation with companies cutting back and jobs disappearing overnight. So you might be sitting fairly comfortably and, you know, feeling fairly smug about the fact that you've got everything under control, but if the job disappears, then a lot of people would be in a lot of trouble, and that's happened. So I do have sympathy with some people, G. Pete says there'll always be a gap between the haves and the have-nots. It's just the size of the gap that changes. Yes, I think you might have a point there. Robin Peel Colley says, I see in Peel people who used to go out for a drink on a Saturday night now only do it once a month. That's because of a lack of money, and some of the benefits are being cut, so people are obviously struggling there as well. It's just that there are a lot of people not aware of it. They don't know it's happening. There are quite a lot of people on the bottom rung of the ladder in the Isle of Man, and I think the problem's only going to get worse. Yeah, I think that this is a phenomenon, really. I don't think this is just people who are being a bit cavalier about in their approach to debt. I think it's that a lot of us are actually earning a lot less money in real terms than we were a few years ago. So, and that's been sort of gradually happening, and along with stealth taxes and things, I think a lot of people are probably worse off than they were 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, and maybe didn't even realise it. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Rob. Stu, I think a major problem is the easy access to loan money with the then high interest rates. The problem today is that everybody wants everything and they want it now. I think there's an element of truth in that. In the past, if you went to a bank, if you had no collateral, you didn't get the loan. Simple as that. True. From your report saying 40% of people are repaying loans, I'd wager it's all for flat screen tallies, iPhones and the like. Can't see anybody borrowing to buy food unless the borrowing would be every week. Ditch everything that's not needed and live within your means. That's the only way out, says Ray. Okay, all right. We don't have debt, but don't drink, smoke or go out. Having trouble paying transport costs as our earnings have dropped off a cliff. Our housing costs are sky high. We've never struggled so much. Interesting. Thank you for that. Now, I did mention earlier on, if you talk to the debt counselling service at the OFT fair trading people, then they'll give you advice about how to deal with that situation and hopefully sort it out a wee bit, because it sounds like 40% of your income going on debt repayments is too high. I think that they might be able to help people structure things a little bit better than that. Not sure, can't speak for them, but if you've got a worry about debt, then do talk to them. But what do you think about this? Can you see that this is a problem in the Isle of Man, or is it just a problem across? Stu, do the debt counsellors not advise those with debts to ditch as much of their payments that are not essential, such as rent, mortgage, utilities, etc.? Or is that a silly question? I'm the first to admit that my budgeting skills are poor, but that would be obvious to me. I'm just glad that I'm in a reasonably secure financial position, but I do feel for those who are in difficulty, says Pam. Well, that's nice, Pam, because, you know, people can be a little bit judgmental about this and it's their own fault, and it isn't always. So, yeah, I don't think many of us are that many paydays away from chill penury. Yeah, I think that if you get debt counselling, and we've had one of the spokespeople on a number of times on the programme, talking about the debt counselling service available in the Isle of Man. I think that they prioritise things. So your rent, for example, or your mortgage is the most important thing to keep going, and then they'll try and restructure some of the less important things to make it all work. But yes, I think that's what it's about, prioritising things. Let's go to the lines. We've got Diane on. Hello, Di.
According to Oxfam, on the 19th of January 2015, 1% of the people owned more than the rest of the world added together.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And by next year, which is this year, 85 people will own 50% of the world.
Yes.
Now, I mean, there's no way out for the people, is there? Because there's only so much to go around, and if they've got most of it, the rest of the billions have only got bits and pieces, haven't they?
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, and it's time that people woke up to this and said, look, we've had enough.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, it's the same as the banksters. If everybody went to the bank and drew out what they theoretically had in there in cash, the whole damn system would collapse, which would be a good thing.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's...
Yeah, because what they do is they lend you money that doesn't exist.
Yes.
And charge you interest on it. But when they say they lend you £10, Stu, you've got to pay back 11.
Yeah.
They don't create the other pound.
Sure.
So that's another bit gone out of circulation, and with all this interest, more and more money is going out of circulation. And the whole thing started when they brought out what was known as credit, and the people then became known not as people, you're all known now as consumers.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so you see, they've labelled us as consumers, not people.
I do worry that the whole world is going to hell in a handcart, and that we are all being very carefully manipulated to achieve the ends of these, like you say, you know, a dozen or whatever families that own most of the world.
Yeah, well, roll on, that's what I say, because the sooner it all goes down, the better.
All right, fair dues, there we go. That'll get our blood coursing then. Let's have a look, what else have we got? Thank you very much, Di. It's dearer to live on the Isle of Man, goods and services cost more, housing is overpriced, low standards. I don't know if there's any more of that. I don't think that there is. The argument has always been that, yes, maybe things are more expensive in the Isle of Man, but we pay lower taxes, and therefore it all equals out at the end of the day. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Payday loan companies, absolute criminals, charging hundreds of thousands of percent interest, but then they must get business. Live within your means, says John. Stu, technically tramps are well off because they're not in debt, says David H. Well, yes, I suppose in many ways that's true. I'm no stranger to using credit when I need to buy things and spread the cost a wee bit, but I must admit it is quite good when you finally pay something off, a car loan or whatever. I think I paid off my motorbike loan in probably February, March, April this year, and it's just nice. You know, that's a few quid that's not going out every month. Lower taxes don't balance our poor roads and housing. Okay, all right. Well, it's a thought, I suppose, but I don't know. On the subject of debt, Stu, isn't it about time that we followed the UK and American elections and get our prospective MHKs to make the tax returns and debt liabilities available for public scrutiny? Many candidates claim to be able to solve our financial problems at the drop of a hat, but they can say that they're a financial genius and have nothing to show for such supposed business success, and would falsehoods be exposed? Let's see how much these would-be MHKs owe and what the value of their property or business is, worse still the debt that they're in. This might really help the people of the island judge who could honestly get us out of the current mess and best deserve our vote. Trust me, this was done by Cameron, Osborne, now Trump and Clinton have all done it, so why not on the island? Asks Bill. Okay, well, maybe it's a thought, I don't know. I suppose it's that fine line between what is private and what is part of your public persona. And if you're an MHK, then you're sort of living in the world of the public. But how much of your private information should be available to people, I don't know, because a lot of people only want to know because they want to know. There's no actual real reason behind it. But Bill makes a reasonable point. Shouldn't the Isle of Man government go see the debt counsellors? Might give them some ideas to save money instead of going on spending sprees like a blonde with a maxed out credit card. I couldn't possibly comment on that.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is the potential sale of the horse tram stable site the right option? The stables and adjacent buildings on Queen's Promenade have this week been put up for sale. Douglas Borough councillors handed over the sheds at Strathallan Crescent to the Department of Infrastructure, which will now oversee the rehousing of the horses there. Would you like to see something done with the buildings? Is their sale the best option for Douglas ratepayers in particular, or would you like to see them kept in public ownership and used for something else? Stu, I hate to state the obvious. Well, what's obvious to you might not be obvious to other people. But why don't the DOI just buy the stables instead of this crackpot idea of building stables in the tram shed? Is it a crackpot? I don't know. I don't know anything about horses. I would have thought, on the face of it, it's a good idea to put them in the same place as the actual things themselves, the trams themselves. But if there's a reason that they shouldn't go in there, apparently it's a totally unsuitable environment to keep horses stabled. Is it? Why? I believe that their plan is to then build a new tram shed. Maybe it's too cheap and simple to just buy the stables, then keep all the infrastructure regarding the horse trams in place. All they need to do is spend a few quid on the tram shed, then get on with running the service. At the end of the day, the DOI can sell the stables on if things don't turn out. Okay, so why would the Strathallan building itself, though, the tram sheds as are there at the moment, not be good stables? And I'm not disputing what you're saying. You're obviously more expert on this than I am. But I'm just generally interested why you don't think that that's suitable. I know Mr. Christian makes no mention of the large amount of money used to create the Strathallan suite. Of course, that's above the tram sheds, isn't it? And if it's had any income. Okay, I don't know. Did it cost a lot of money to do that up? I think it's been used for a couple of inquiries and things like that, hasn't it? I don't know if it's used for much else, though. Corpia spot on getting rid of the burden of the horse trams to government, but when will they do the same to that other big loss maker that is Douglas Golf Course? Come on, Mr. Christian, practice what you preach, says Alan. Does it lose a lot of money? Horse tram sheds and stables should be handed over to government and horse trams should be run as a national asset. Well, I think that's kind of the way that it's going, isn't it? Except that the horse tram sheds and stables are a Douglas Corpy asset and are therefore something that they can sell. Once again, the bleeding hearts of the horse tram protection squad are whinging about the sale of yet another costly part of the horse tram package, says Mal. If these people are so intent to keep it all as it once was, why aren't they clubbing together to take them over? Oh, I know why. They're happy to see other people's money being lost. Different story when it comes to their own. Scrap the lot, says Mal. Yeah, I'm kind of with Mal, I think, on an awful lot of that. Horse trams, best suggestion I've heard is to move everything to the Summerland site, including the MER station. That's from Tony in Douglas. Okay, is that not a bit sort of over the top, though, Tony? I mean, it's a pretty huge footprint, that, for what is a fairly sort of small service, isn't it? Not that anybody seems to be falling over themselves to take over the Summerland site and do something more impressive with it, but I mean, once you sort of did that, then it would preclude anything else from going there, and I expect that government probably thinking that at some point somebody's going to come along and build something magnificent there. I think we're all hoping that anyway. If you've got a point of view about the horse trams and the stables, do you think that they ought to stay where they are? Do you think that it's right to sell them off? Do you think that the buildings could be used for something else? And somebody said, one of our first contributors said that that using where the actual tram carriages are kept at Strathallan is the wrong place to keep the horses as well. I'm not quite sure why, but I don't know anything about horses, so maybe somebody could explain why that isn't going to be a particularly good place to keep the horses as well. Maybe they could put wheels on the trams and run on one side of the road, leaving the middle and the other lane free for traffic. Also, no peak hours travel, says BB. Well, yeah, I don't think that's likely to gain much traction, if you'll allow the pun. Stu, the Summerland site will never be developed. The cost of the cliff stabilisation makes it completely impractical. Why do you think it's been an eyesore for so long? I presumed it had been an eyesore for so long because the government expects somebody to come along and give them a huge amount of money for the site, and that's unlikely to happen. Is it really that big a problem to stabilise the cliff? I mean, it's been stable there for yonks, hasn't it, with the Summerland building in front of it? Or is that what kept it stable? Again, I'm not a civil engineer, so I don't know quite what the practicalities of that are. Is it not just a case of drilling some rods through and stuff and sticking it together? Why did they put the horse trams at the home of rest for old horses? They could lay the tracks down across the fields up there and have a great view as people ride the trams on the way around the home. Cheers, Stu. That from Barry. I think that would be a great solution to the horse trams generally, yeah. But then when I say that, people get all uppity about it. So I'm not going to have an opinion about horse trams anymore. But I would have thought that would be a good solution. It doesn't solve the problem, though, of course, of what is going to happen to the stables. If that happened, then would you get rid of the lot? Would you get rid of Strathallan and the stables as well? Or would you like to keep them and use them for something else for the utility of Douglas ratepayers? Douglas Council quick to criticise property owners who don't look after their properties but sell off or give government their own assets rather than look after them. The Villa Marina Market Hall, now the stables. Right then. And I asked the question because somebody got on and said that building is totally unsuitable for that purpose. And I asked the question why, and I've got the answer here, which is fantastic. The tram shed is not suitable for horses as there's no ventilation in it due to its monopitch roof, which can't be ventilated above the horses. Wow, right. The tin roof would then cause condensation, which would provide the perfect environment for viruses to breed. Tin roof would also generate a lot of heat on a hot day. You also need to be able to circulate fresh air from around wall height. Cool. Well, not cool. Clearly. Thank you for that explanation. That makes it a lot clearer. I mean, surely the doors are all wide open, so did you not get enough circulation that way during the course of the day? Maybe not, I don't know. Turn the stables into a home of rest for a retired MHK, says Dave. Badum. Not even a tish with that one. Yeah, all right, then fine. Petting zoo sort of thing, do you think? People would come along and feed them with sugar cubes and things? Who knows?
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Has the Isle of Man Festival of Motorcycling now secured itself in the motor racing calendar? The Festival of Motorcycling really starts to kick into gear today. It's the start of the classic TT long weekend with the Paddock Carnival taking place. So has the festival now secured its place properly in the motor racing calendar, do you think? Stu, the TT Classic is well and truly here to stay. Fans are only coming for the bank holiday weekend to watch the TT Classic. It's a good job that DED set this up a few years ago because the MGP was dead in the water. Nothing was changing. I've seen a massive difference in the event and fans since the Classic started. Let's hope it gets even better. That from John. Stu, I think the Festival of Motorcycling is a superb event, attracting lots of new visitors. Oh, good. Unfortunately, they moan about the same stuff as our other tourists, the state of our roads, mainly the prom, and the steam packet costs of getting here. We really need to invest in Douglas. There's so much wasteland, it looks like a war zone in parts. That from Rick. Okay, but, I mean, who should invest? That's the trouble. I think government would quite love the idea of somebody coming along and investing a chunk of money to fill some of these eyesore sites, but there doesn't seem to be much private investment money around. He's on Circular Road, I see. I think, is it Microgaming or somebody up there building a fantastic new headquarters building? But there's not much else going on around Douglas, I don't think, and the government say that they've got no money for things like that. Douglas Corp has probably not got any money, so who could do it is the question. But we're talking primarily about the Festival of Motorcycling. Now that it's all been rebranded and relaunched as a different thing altogether rather than just the MGP, do you think it's better, worse, whatever? Do you think it's becoming established now? Do you think people are talking about it and thinking about it as the Festival of Motorcycling rather than as the Manx Grand Prix? Until the public are told the cost of putting on the classic TT, how can we make our minds up? Okay. Paul Phillips is spending taxpayers' money on the Classic and nothing on the MGP. I'd go as far as to say that here Manx Radio put a block on promotion of the MGP. Conspiracy theory. Both have to stand together to survive, or the Classic TT will just be a pipe dream. The Classic TT riders get their entries and insurance paid for by the taxpayers, while MGP riders pay £400 a race. Kill one off and you kill both, says Pat. Okay, I'm not an expert in it, so I don't know. Spoke to a well-known hotelier. He tells us that before the Classic TT, his hotel had been 90 to 100% full for the 2 weeks. Now he's lucky to get 6 good days full. Also, Classic fans don't spend like the MGP fans who don't mind buying a beer in his hotel. Charity that has a stall in the paddock puts everything raised back into helping injured riders, has to pay the DED thousands to be in the paddock. It's disgusting.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks as ever to everyone who took part in the programme. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion yourself, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays, or you can share your thoughts on the Facebook page. That's Talking Heads with Stu Peters. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com, and the website's also where you'll get an update of what's being discussed on the programme each day. You can also keep up to date with that information by liking the Facebook page or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if there's anything you think we should be discussing on the programme, let us know by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.